welcome to Education, Leadership, and Beyond, Surviving and Thriving. Let me get this cut off here. It is show number 65. My name is Andrew Murata, host of the show, and I am on location once again, and sure enough, we have an echo in here, so my guest said it sounds like I'm in the bathroom, but I'm not in the bathroom. I'm actually in the Port Jervis YMCA. I'm at an event for my school, and I ducked out of there to take care of this program and get rolling with Education, Leadership, and Beyond. So we are excited that we are on in Canada. This is airing live on Voice Ed Radio with my friend Stephen Hurley, and we're going to talk about our journey of getting to know each other and his work with Voice Ed Radio. That being said, it is show number 65. And again, happy to be back on Education, Leadership, and Beyond. So today is a Tuesday, and the past 2 weekends in upstate New York, I took some road trips. I was in Syracuse the weekend before, and if you watched my show with my nephew, so I drove from Northeast Pennsylvania to Syracuse, and then this past weekend I was at a conference in Lake Placid, New York. So for those up here in the Northeast, I was on the Thruway, and man, it was just beautiful, really beautiful out. The trees, the colors, and my wife was yelling at me to keep my eyes on the road, but it was just really so beautiful. What a beautiful time of year. And you know, when you think about fall, what do you think about? The trees, right? We think about the beautiful trees and all the beautiful scenery. And I got thinking about prepping for my show with Stephen Hurley and what we were going to talk about and school. And, you know, when you're driving, you just start thinking about things. I got thinking about that beauty is like people, right? You're dealing with people, and there are all different kinds, all different shapes, all different sizes, and all different personalities. And it was like those trees, right? It was like those trees that were just so beautiful together. And when you put all those people together and all of those things together, it's just so, you know, they're different, right? But when you put them all together, they look beautiful. So I got thinking about, as a leader, as someone who works in a school, you know, you put all your different staff together and what they make up together. And it's a beautiful thing, right? It's what makes the world go round. Instead of trying to make all of those trees the same or trying to make all of the staff the same, you celebrate those differences. You celebrate the differences in people and their styles and how they do things. I just went through a long process of interviewing people for an assistant principal job, and there were so many different kinds of people I met and different styles. And at the end of the day, I hired someone that is different from me, right? And they're going to help make me and my team better because of their differences. And that goes back to those trees, right? They're different, but you put them all together and they make something beautiful. Sometimes in education, people want things to be exactly the same, right? They want every kid to be treated the same way, or every situation with a staff member to be treated the same way. And I just don't think like that, right? It's not what makes the world go round. And the differences that we have is I think, things to celebrate. So I can hear some kids in the background. They must have come into the field house here, and we're just going to deal with that. So if there's some noise in the background, I apologize. But that being said, that's the opening concept, right? Take those differences in people, and when you have them and they're all together, people are different. It's a beautiful thing, right? Your schools and their different teachers and their different styles really is what makes things beautiful about a school. And I thought about that on my drives, and that's the opening concept today. So we are going to welcome Stephen in here, and there he is. And you sound like you are in a much more contained, radio-friendly, podcast-friendly environment, Stephen.
Hey, it's taken years to build this up, but yes, here I am. I hope I'm not too loud for you. Let me know. I can adjust my mic.
No, you could give us a little more volume. Go ahead.
Okay. How's that? Is that a little better?
That sounds great. And you're coming to us from Canada, correct?
That is right. The Great White North.
There you go. What city are you in, Stephen?
Well, I live just west of Toronto, so in a little place called Milton. So it's a little town
Okay.
that's growing. It's probably the largest growing town in the country.
We just had some guests here, Stephen.
That makes it real, doesn't it? That makes it real.
Yeah. let me.
I love it.
This is not good. Yeah. This is not good. For our listeners out there, I apologize. I think I'm in the wrong spot.
You're in the wrong forest. You're in the wrong forest.
You can't make it up. You can't make it up. And we are live, so there's not much I can do about it. So, Stephen, I appreciate you rolling with me. But let's get to it, Stephen. Tell me about this Voice Ed Radio and this group you started and the work you're doing with Voice Ed Radio.
So voiced.ca, and it's only one E, so voiced.ca started, I guess, about in 2011. And one thing I noticed as I was moving through the education space, through blogs and through various conversations, that there seemed to be a lot of polarization developing in the conversations we have. And they were kind of one side arguing against another side, whether it's the reading wars or the math wars. And I happened upon that is too funny. Who can't appreciate that, eh? If you love schools and you love education, you gotta love that noise.
It's a modified track meet, so they are 7th and 8th grade cross country runners, and I think I'm in the wrong spot. So.
Well, I just left my son at a volleyball tournament up the street, so I know that quite well. But no, so I was concerned that we weren't having the conversations we could be having around education, and so I began a multi-author blog space back in 2011 called Voice Ed. And I guess today, anytime you have an ED on the end of anything, it really lends itself to an education context. So I ran that for a few years. And at that time, not everyone had blogs. There weren't as many education bloggers around. And so I really welcomed people into that. There was no charge to become a blogger. And we really tried to get some conversation going around on a deeper level. But even then, there was a bit of an echo chamber, and so that lasted a few years. I was reading a book at Christmas time in 2016, and it was called The Age of Discovery. And in that book, there was one single line that Chris Katarna, the author, made, and he said, there's a fine line in a new Renaissance, or in a Renaissance period rather. There's a fine line between the creator and the creation. And I believe we're living in a Renaissance period where people can create. People can create art, they can create craft, they can create podcasts, they can create, books. There's a very fine line between the creator and the consumer of that creation. And I think that's really exciting. So I've always loved radio, and I had been involved with internet radio dating back to 2011 again. And I remember putting down that book, and within 3 or 4 hours, I had leased a radio stream and began Voice Ed Radio, which is really an extension of that original vision to get us deeper into some of the conversations about education.
And it was that book that got you going?
It was
brewing for years here.
Yeah, and you know what? I learned in grade 4 that I wanted to be in radio and on the radio, and when it came time to apply to radio college, my parents said, "No way, you're going to a university. You're not going to a technical college." And so I went and studied philosophy and theology, and went to a seminary and entered teaching, and had a 30-year career. And then, passions never die, and so the ability to get on and create something like Voice Ed Radio wasn't possible 10, 15 years ago. It is now, and that's what we're doing. And so that's what I spend my 14 hours a day doing.
And you're approaching 2 years here, correct?
Yes, I'm approaching 2 years. We're approaching 2 years.
And so tell me, what is it, what do you hope to accomplish in 5 years of Voice Ed Radio? What is it that you hope, or what are you hoping to accomplish?
I'm hoping that we can contribute. Hang on, someone's trying to get in touch with me. Sorry about that. That's my phone ringing.
Interrupted now too.
Yeah, I get interrupted. Sorry. So my phone comes onto my computer, and yeah. Sorry, I didn't. I hope to contribute in some way to the deepening and the broadening of conversations that we have in Canada and elsewhere around education. I think if we're going to change the way we do school and do education, then we have to change the way we talk about education and school. And I think there's a lot of depth that we can still get out of our work. And I fear that more than ever, our political systems and the conversations we have in the public space are becoming increasingly polarized. And I really hope that something like Voice Ed Radio can gather a community together that's willing to kind of get down in the weeds. And one of the signs of success for us is the fact that we now have people on here, are you ready for it, that don't agree with each other. And as soon as you get people talking with each other that don't agree with each other, first of all, one thing I noticed is that as soon as you bring voices together, as opposed to allowing people to write in 280 characters, something happens. And then when those voices meet face to face over a brew or a glass of wine or some other beverage, things change, and they realize that the other person doesn't have horns and that they can have actual conversations. And that's what's starting to happen here. So in 5 years, I just hope this is a viable, sustainable space where we can continue to have those conversations that can really change education.
And Stephen, you have a number of shows on there. Your website is great. How do you select what kind of content that you want on there? Are you the sole person that says yes or no? And how do you make those selections of what shows make your playlist?
Well, what I do, I guess about 25% of my day is spent reaching out to people in the education space and beyond and looking for interesting content. So many of the people in the early stages, and we began in February of 2017 with 2 podcasts. It was Roland Chidiak out of Kitchener-Waterloo and Derek Rodenizer out of Ottawa. And people that tuned in said, I hear a lot of Derek and I hear a lot of Roland and I hear some music too, because we have music rights. And now we have 65 podcasts in our community. Wow. Many of those podcasts were created because of this space, but people like you were already doing podcasts. And so, reaching out and having other people find us and say, hey, I'd like to be part of this. So there is, in terms of a vetting process, there's really only a couple of things that we use as criteria. First of all, the person has to obviously be committed to what they're doing. We try to encourage people to, join. They're joining a community. It's not come to Voice Ed Radio and we'll play your stuff. Yes, we will play your stuff, but we really invite you into a community of conversation. We invite you into some of our live broadcasting. So we go live many days during the week, and we invite people into those. If you're a podcaster, we invite you to experiment with live, just like you're doing now. And
that can be good and bad.
Good and bad, yeah. I love live. There's less editing to do.
Yeah, sure.
But we also we also ask people to respect each other and respect that there are going to be voices here that they don't agree with, and maybe they openly disdain. But that's what it's about. And the only other criteria is that you want to work with us. I guess the other thing is that we're not a commercial space. So if your podcast is full of advertising, we're probably gonna take a pass on that. I mean, we realize that people need to monetize, make money at what they're doing in some cases, but we're really trying to create a non-commercial space here. So those are the ones that we may take a second look at and think about carefully.
And not only are you managing all of this stuff and getting podcasts and things like that, you're also doing some of them. I took a look at yours there, the In Conversation with Stephen Hurley. Tell me about your podcast and what you're doing on your show.
So what I try to do is get as many interesting people in education, but also understanding that there's a whole ecosystem that surrounds schools. And I want to talk to the people that are doing things in education, but not necessarily in schools. So I'll go out and I'll talk to people that are in the publishing business. I'll talk to people who are authors themselves that may not be writing education books, but may be interested in sharing how they actually create. I think that's important for us to hear. I'll talk to politicians. I'll talk to researchers. We're starting a whole stream of conversations with the research community in education and trying to close that gap between what happens in universities and what happens in the field in the schools. And you know what? I've reached out, and some of the most interesting people I've found are. I'll read at least one journal article every day. I'm a little geeky that way, and then I'll email the author. I'll read a book and finish it, and before I put it down, I'll email the author. And there's been very, very few people who have not gotten back to me enthusiastically wanting to be part of a conversation. And so in conversation is a collection of voices from the field, from research, from the author community. Interviewed some musicians, some philosophers. They're really anyone that I wake up and find kind of interesting. That's who makes them in conversation.
And that's so great to hear that people are getting back to you, and just like you and I connected, right? Trying to do good work in the field of education, and to talk about it. So that's really cool. Stephen, after the thing airs, right? After the podcast airs, some of mine get thousands of views, right? Or thousands of listens, and others just get a few hundred. Have you determined what it is? Like, I wouldn't say things are going viral, but have you kind of said like, oh yeah, this is going to play well, or Andrew Murata's New York accent on Voice at Radio Canada is gonna resonate? Like, what is it that makes some of them go into the thousands?
I think there are a couple of things, Andrew, that I'm learning. One is, of course, the promotion. You need to get out there on social media and let people know that it's there. And then once people are there, I think people like things that are real. A lot of the podcasts and the broadcasts that we have on Voice Ed Radio are conversational. So it's not one person, giving the 5 things to do before you wake up on a Sunday morning. I guess the first one would be to wake up, wouldn't it? But they're really conversational. They're really grounded in what people care about and what they're passionate about. Now, that said, there are some of the most famous podcasts out there are people that are giving the 5 things you should do before you wake up on a Sunday morning, and they have personality behind them. But one of the things that we're finding is that people like to listen to people like them. And so they're not looking for gurus or superstars or heroes. Those ones will always play well, but there's something that is captivating about a teacher in a classroom spending a Saturday or a Sunday or a morning creating a podcast about something that's happened in their classroom that week. We have one real stellar community member. She's just so much a part of what we do. Carol Salva from Texas. She is an ELL teacher down in Texas, and she produces a weekly podcast. And she's just received so much play on those because she's giving people something they need on Monday. And you know what? I was just thinking about a quote today from someone that I used to work with at Edutopia. I was one of those early bloggers on Edutopia back in the day. And she said, people need, and we were talking about what sells or what would get play as a blog. And she said, people need something for someday, but they also need something for Monday. So something for someday, something for Monday. And I think a podcast that can give them something to take away and maybe think about today, but then something to chew on over the course of the year, I think is kind of cool.
Well, that being said, I hope middle school kids yelling in the background plays well in Canada.
Well, it does.
But that being said, what did you think of the opening concept about the differences in people and celebrating those differences?
Yeah, I think that really resonated. It really resonates with me. We tend to think, you're right. We tend to think of schools as these places of monolithic entities, whether it's teachers and whether it's students. And I think one of the gifts that a teacher can bring into the life of any student is the willingness to see them. And in order to see a child, you have to look. And you have to recognize that they are unique. And we have someone up here doing work in self-reg, Stuart Shanker. He says, "See a child differently, see a different child," and I think that's really, really a powerful concept. So
say that one more time. I'm going to write that down.
See a child differently, see a different child.
Wow,
isn't that powerful?
That is powerful. I'm going to use that right away.
And I think we bring so many assumptions to our work, and we have to bring assumptions to our work. We can't survive not making some assumptions. But when those assumptions get in the way of our seeing what's in front of us, it's like the forest for the trees, right? And the drive you took and the drive we take in the autumn up here, and I'm sure you do down there as well, is just so beautiful. But it's that landscape. It's seeing things from a distance. But then when you walk into the forest, when you walk into the woods on an autumn day, you also smell. There's a smell of especially in a deciduous forest. There's a special smell in autumn. It's almost like a burnt smell. And I'm not sure how else to describe it. But if you don't walk into the forest, you don't smell it. And I think as teachers, we need to walk into the forest every day and see what our senses bring us. And I mean, I've always said that teaching, no, I haven't always said it. I'm going to say it now, though. Teaching is such a sensual thing. It involves sight, and it involves sound, and it involves, the smells of the gymnasium you're in now. And but we need to appreciate that. So we need to really, as teachers, live with all of our senses, and the students are going to give us lots of feedback, and we just have to be ready to take that in and to do something with it.
And you started talking about teaching in your career, Stephen. You're a retired teacher now, is that right? So,
well, that's what they say.
Tell me a little bit about your teaching career. What did you teach? What level? And some of the things about when you taught.
Well, as I said, I wanted to go into radio. So teaching was a fallback career, according to my parents. Not that I didn't have a mind of my own, but I had I grew up in a strict Roman Catholic household, and you kind of lived that life. And so my mom said, go into teaching, you'll always have something to fall back on. And I fell into teaching, but I never fell out. So 30 years. Just an indicator of, and I don't mean to sound like I'm bragging or self-righteous. In those 30 years, I took 3 days off, sick days, and are
you serious?
Yeah,
wow.
and one of them I didn't want to be away, and it's not that I was a martyr. I mean, I came in, on a Monday morning, probably a little tired, and I could have taken a day off, and I came in with, sniffles and whatnot. But there was something about the career, there's something about being in schools that really motivated me. And I would get up, I would look forward to every day, not because I was looking forward to a perfect day. Many times I looked forward to getting back to school so I could correct some of the mistakes I made the day before. But there was a real sense of wonder and curiosity about the whole thing, and in the first years, I began teaching grades 7 and 8, and taught pretty well everything at grades 7 and 8. I taught some instrumental music along the way. I took a couple breaks in my career to be a district level consultant in the area of religious education, and then something happened. I started writing proposals, for jobs. and they ended up giving me the jobs. So people would say in my later years, well, what job have you made up for yourself this year? So I would say a third of my career was spent doing jobs that didn't exist before I made them up, and it was kind of cool. So I guess in all of that, the narrative, the big picture narrative, is that I found teaching to be a place for imagination and creativity, and right up until my retirement, and still to this day, that's what I live by. I get up at 4:30 every morning to get started on Voice Ed Radio, and I go to bed at 11 o'clock. I know I'm not getting enough sleep, but it's just so exciting, so exciting.
You can hear the passion in your voice. You really can, and you can tell you're excited about what you're working on, which is very cool. Give me an example of a proposal that you wrote. You were teaching something, and you said you proposed something else?
So back in the mid '90s, they started to bring computers into the schools in a different way. I mean, we had some PET and Commodore computers in the school, but they started to move them in, Apple computers. And I realized that not everyone was interested in them or knew what to do with them. So I wrote a proposal basically that says, take me out of a school, put me in the family, the district. And we had 12, I guess 6 families of school in our board, a very large board. And each of those families had 12 schools. I said, I'll divide up my time. I'll go from classroom to school, classroom to classroom. I'll be an itinerant curriculum and technology resource teacher, an ICTERT for short. It sounded like a prehistoric bird. I found the email of the superintendent, and at that time that wasn't easy to do because we were just getting started on internet technology, and she was so impressed that I tracked her down, and I got the job. I remember in the summer it was touch and go. She kind of went to the mat for me, and I emailed her and I said, I've got a bottle of champagne in one hand and the grade 7-8 curriculum in the other, and I'm not sure which one to open because it was getting towards September. She says, open the champagne, you're in. And so we did that, and that job still exists. That role still exists. And I guess now they would be called technology coaches, but back then nobody had ever heard of anything like that. So well,
look at you going out on the limb and right. If you don't ask for it, you're not going to get it, right?
It always happened in March. March break, our spring break, it's not a floating holiday around Easter like some of the states, but March, those the first mild days after a long winter, and I would get out the pen or the computer or whatnot, and I would write a proposal, and there was something. It was my spring fever. And
did you stay within the same district the whole time in your 30 years? Were you in the same district? Okay.
Same district. There were enough schools. A lot of schools. They're much larger than some of the districts in the States. So we had 120 elementary schools. So there was a lot of place to go, and a lot of excitement, especially in those early years. I mean, we were hiring 500 teachers every year for the district, and But there was a spirit then, and if you caught on to that spirit, you could do anything. And now that's changed a little bit now. I mean, it's locked down a bit more now, but so that's what I found. 30 years of imagination, creativity, and a lot of mistakes. And I said to someone the other day, they said, "Well, what was your favorite day of the week?" And it must be Monday. And I said, "Yeah, it was Monday." What was the worst day of the week? Well, Friday. I didn't like Fridays, other than the fact that we all used to go over to the pub on a Friday. But Friday, it was the longest period of time between when I made the mistake and when I could correct it. So,
wow.
And I made a lot of mistakes, and I didn't have the same insights that I do now, and but it was a journey.
And Stephen, I didn't have this in our question list here, but listening to you speak, you mentioned the seminary and growing up Roman Catholic and religious education. And I actually thought about being a priest myself. Is that something that because you're really a teacher in that role?
Yeah.
Is that something that you had considered also?
It's something I consider every day. Now I'm married now, so I can't do it. But no, I was in the seminary for 2 years, and I hung around churches growing up. I was a church organist when I was 14, and did that for 40 years and ran the youth group. And I guess if you hang around the steel company all your life as a young kid, then you're probably going to steel. So it just seemed to, and there were a couple other things that were happening at the time. I mean, in 1980, when I was graduating university, Afghanistan was invaded by the Russians. They were talking about the draft in the States and up here in Canada as well. And I don't know, in hindsight, whether that was kind of in the back of my mind when I wanted to continue school and not ready to graduate in the midst of that political upheaval. But yeah, no, I've always had a love of philosophy. I believe actually, Andrew, that we have too many psychologists in our education system and not enough philosophers. I think for every 5 psychologists we hire, every district should be required to hire 1 philosopher.
Get them thinking.
Get those questions out there and not rush to the answers. Just enjoy that process of thinking.
Well, you are an interesting guy, Stephen. You've done a lot of stuff, and but I can really hear the passion in your voice about what you're doing now, and I'm happy to be a part of it. And we're grateful to you for allowing Education Leadership Beyond in Canada. And I hope all my new middle school friends here are not going to get me kicked out of this is unbelievable. So I appreciate your patience, Stephen.
This is a lot of fun.
Yeah. So, well, the fun part of the show is the rapid fire portion. People get a lot of feedback of it. So let's get to it, and hopefully my middle school friends will let us get through it. So,
okay.
You mentioned the book that really gave you a paradigm shift, the Age of Discovery. But what's the last book you read now?
The last book I read was actually an audiobook, and the one that I finished, Educated by Tara Westover.
Okay.
Do you know
last movie is, I don't know, but I'm writing it down here. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay. Canadian?
No, she's from Idaho. True story.
Oh,
True story.
okay.
Yeah, you need to read it.
Okay. Last movie you saw?
Hidden Figures.
You give it the 2 thumbs up?
Yeah. I was, I don't watch a lot of adult movies. Well, I mean, adult in the sense of, that aren't animated. And so that was the last one that I actually got to see.
Okay.
And so just the fact that it was not animated was 2 thumbs up.
If we scroll through your phone, what would be the greatest artist or the most played artist we would say?
I would say Neil Young, Canadian. I love the folk rock, classic rock, but Neil Young and Dire Straits, early Dire Straits.
Cool. Biggest professional pet peeve?
This one's going to offend some people, but I don't like the branding of the profession in this the way that it's happening now. I like the ability to put yourself out there and your ideas out there, but I don't like some of the commercialization branding stuff that's happening.
Give me an example.
So, well, I mean, this is not branding. That's not branding. That's writing a book. But there are brands created. You go to some people's websites and they have the swag. You get your T-shirt. There people get on this keynote circuit and go around. On that circuit. There's something, and I can't put my finger on it. There's something that to me actually limits conversation. So once you're branded in a certain way, then you have to protect that brand. And it's a commercialization of something that I think should be beyond commercialization. I'm not saying people shouldn't be making money doing what they're passionate about, but there's a philosophical conversation to be had there, perhaps.
Yeah, I like that, Stephen. That's a great point. And best thing about Voice Ed Radio Canada.
The community that's forming here, the people that come and want to be part of it and want to share their ideas. And, to me, it just sends chills when I hear of people from Texas meeting someone in Canada that they've met on Voice Ed Radio, but actually meeting face to face and staying with them. It's there's something happening here, and I think that's the best thing for me. Very
cool. Best thing about being Canadian or being from Canada?
The seasons. It's got to be the seasons. We make a commitment to our seasons here. even with climate change, we have a glorious autumn, a committed winter, and the summer and spring are both glorious as well. Yeah, so I would say the seasons. That's what I would miss most about not living in Canada.
The CFL or the NFL?
Oh, CFL. What's the NFL?
And is Doug Flutie still a hero in the CFL?
Oh no, you got to watch the CFL. CFL is much more exciting. We only have 3 downs, and it's a great experience. The crowds aren't as big. I know the money's not as big. When I grew up with the CFL, I grew up going to the Toronto Argonaut games, and those some of those players became teachers, and they would play during the summer, and they were teachers during the school year.
In your district?
Oh yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. The biggest difference that you think in the Canadian education system versus the U.S.?
Well, now, how do you say that without offending someone? I think we have a very strong commitment to the idea of public education here. And I know you have a public education system. I think the equity conversation here is really strong. It's being threatened a little bit, and I think we stand at a really important opportunity here to really stand up and say, what do we mean when we talk about public education and publicly funded education?
Cool. I know that's a debate that could go on forever.
Yeah.
I went to Catholic school. You're talking about, your Roman Catholic education, but I've been teaching in public schools now for 20 plus years. And there is a lot there. There's a lot of value there, and we're doing good work. So.
Well, I'll tell you something, though, Andrew. In the province of Ontario, and education is a provincial jurisdiction and responsibility. In the province of Ontario, our Catholic schools are fully funded.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's powerful. Yeah, that's powerful.
Just so you know.
Something that motivates you is?
Hearing a new voice. And again, in the voice ed radio context, hearing someone come on and do their very first episode, it's a turn on. It's like, it keeps me going.
Cool. The 3 most important qualities of a teacher.
I'd say number 1, professional knowledge. That's important. I sometimes it's framed as willingness to try new things. I'd say a commitment to try new things is really important. And then, of course, we were talking earlier about empathy, the ability to realize that your perspective is not the only perspective. And I'm not sure who said it, but I love the idea. The phrase, I'm not sure who discovered water, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't a fish. And the ability to step outside that, our perspective and see someone else's, I think is important.
Besides your job and your family, what is something that you're most proud of?
I would say my music, and it's something that I don't spend enough time on now, but it's something that I go to quite often in social circles. I used to play in a band. As I said, I used to be a church organist. And last year I went back and took a piano exam that I walked away from 50 years earlier, or 40 years earlier. And I put myself out there and, got a teacher and went back and did that. So I'm very proud of that. You
got a lot of things in your hopper, man. You are an interesting guy, Steven. I'll tell you. Short-term personal goal, 3 to 5 months.
Get in shape. I need to get in shape. I sit too many hours in front of a microphone, and I need to get in shape. Now that said, I turned 60 last week, and I think I'm doing okay for 60. I've got a 9 and an 11-year-olds. I'm not sure how that. Well, I know how it happened, but I don't know why it happened. And they need me, so I need to stay in shape.
Yeah. Oh wow. Kudos to you. Tell me your children's names.
Luke and Liam. Luke is 11 and Liam is 9, and they're both amazing. I can't say it's been the easiest 9 and 11 years. I lived most of my life single. And didn't get married till I was 48. I didn't get married till I was 48 because I didn't want to dance. I can't dance, and I really didn't want to dance at my wedding, and so I sort of ran away from a lot of really great things. So,
well, that is cool. Long-term personal goal, 3 to 5 years.
Well, it's got to be a Voice Ed Radio goal. It's I want this place to become vibrant and sustainable. I want it to be a hub for learning. I've got so many plans and dreams for this place. I feel we're just beginning, and I need some funding. So funding is an important part.
Yeah, sure. Well, speaking of funding, if someone's listening that loves radio and loves education and wants to sponsor, how can people, number one, learn more about Voice Ed Radio, and two, how can people get in touch with you?
So the website voiced.ca is really our home, and we're getting that redesigned now. So this is a kind of an intermediary website. We have so much content coming in that we need to find a way of cataloging it and making it much more searchable. So people can get in touch with us by going to the website voiced.ca. So voiced.ca, and they can get in touch with me, Stephen with a PH. Thanks, Mom. At voiced.ca. And they can listen. We have a Voice Ed Radio app, so they can listen to the live stream. We have stuff playing, content playing in our live stream 24/7, and they can access that through our Voice Ed Radio app or on the website as well. And we're also you can find us on Spotify and TuneIn Radio.
Oh, you're on Spotify. So what do I look on Spotify? Because we're new to Spotify. What do I?
So you should be able to find some of our podcasts there. But if you actually go to TuneIn Radio or go to the radio part of Spotify, I think they've added that now. You should be able to find us there under Voice Ed Radio. Cool.
Okay. And I know I asked you for your favorite quote, and I started writing it down, and then so we're gonna let you read that T.S. Eliot quote. Go ahead.
Yeah, T.S. Eliot I love, and I that would be one of my short-term goals, is to read more poetry and philosophy. But T.S. Eliot has a wonderful phrase that I love, and he says, "We shall never cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time."
I love it. And you're exploring this world of radio. And you know what? You hit that pause button. You had that seed early, and I give you a lot of credit, Stephen, for this. And I'm excited for you. I'm going to get this app. I'm going to listen more. But you're doing great things, man. Congratulations.
Well, you're doing great things, and we appreciate having your voice here. And I know I was kind of slowing, and because we have 65 podcasts now, and I guess about 2 or 3 coming in every week, people that want to be part of it. I need to get a newsletter out there to the community to bring people together, and we're going to have a virtual pub night coming up.
I'm in.
Yeah, you're in. And we have we're getting ready already for our second anniversary, and so we will have like we did on our first anniversary an 18-hour live radio marathon. So cool. That'll be on February 2nd, Groundhog Day.
Cool.
And, that'll be fun. Yeah. So spread the word, and we'll spread the word about you, and we'd love to get you up here to Canada somehow. And if you haven't found it, you asked me for my book recommendation. I was going to put that up there on the screen, but
there you go. A lot of shipping for that book to get to Canada.
Well, I know, I appreciate it. And it's signed. I love it.
There you go. Well, I appreciate you looking at that. And I know we'll connect on some education things. I was going to recommend a Canadian. I'm not sure if you know George Couros.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
But so he was our speaker in Lake Placid and just did a fantastic job. I like your accent a little bit more than his. But really was a great speaker. So The Innovator's Mindset by George Couros is the book recommendation.
Yeah. Can I give a book recommendation of my own?
Yeah, please do.
So one that has really captivated my imagination is called The Beautiful Risk of Education. And you would appreciate it probably, Andrew, because it's got a little bit of a philosophical bent. It's by Gert Biesta, Gert Biesta. Biesta, who I believe is in the UK now. But he's one of those breed of European educationalists who are philosophers and psychologists and thinkers all wrapped up in one. And so I recommend that book to anyone that wants to take a deeper dive.
Well, cool. I apologize for all the noise here, Stephen. I thought all the kids would be outside running, but I was mistaken. So
no, this has been a lot of fun, and I appreciate being on with you today.
You hung in. Your concentration was deep, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Cool, Stephen. Well, again, Voice Ed Radio Canada, Stephen Hurley, doing great things, and we're definitely going to keep in touch, Stephen, and do some things with education and with radio.
Awesome. Have a great day.
You too. I'm going to cue this music up here, and we're going to sign off here on Education, Leadership, and Beyond, Surviving and Thriving. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Continue to go out and change the world of education, do great things for kids. Stephen Hurley, Voice Ed Radio. Thanks so much.
Awesome.
All right.